who's actually serving as the clerk?
Myself and Elaine are serving this evening as running the screen behind the board.
Got it. You're the Wizard of Oz at all times. So could we have Elaine, maybe could you call the roll then?
I've got it here in front of me. Chair O'Connell,
I'm present.
Vice Chair Thomas,
You're muted. You're muted, Brian.
he's
I'm
here.
now here. Sorry.
Let's see. Board Member Marshall,
I see him.
George, you're muted.
Present.
there we go. Board Member Milton,
Present.
Board Member Quantz,
Present.
Board Member Majewski is absent, and Board Member Picorni also absent.
Oh, with 5 members, that is a quorum, so I'll call us to order. The first item of business is introducing our new member of the board. Welcome, Will. It's a pleasure to meet you. Why don't you just tell us a little bit about yourself? Welcome you to the board.
Yeah, thank you. Happy to be here and happy for the chance to serve in this function. I'm sorry, I wasn't, I guess it's a good problem to have, but I wasn't anticipating being blinded by the sun right now. Yeah, I lived on Mercer Island for about 2 years. Close to 4 years, actually. Time goes by quickly. My partner grew up here. I work for Brown and Caldwell, which is a environmental engineering and consulting firm, and have been at BC for about 15 years and have really enjoyed working in public utilities. I think it's a really important work. I know BC has some work with the city related to its SCADA project, which I personally don't have any involvement with, but just really happy to be able to bring my experience and hopefully help and learn more by being part of this group.
Well, welcome. It's a pleasure to have you. This is a good board. As is the city right throughout the course of the year. So welcome. Thank you for just to help the citizens of Mercer Island.
Yeah, indeed. Welcome.
Thank you.
Why don't we just so that you know us a little better, why don't we go ahead and do some introductions of the current board members to you. Kind of do in reverse order. George, why don't you go just introduce yourself very briefly for Will?
Hey, Will, George Marshall here. I think I've been on the board for a couple of years. I'm retired. I worked for Puget Sound Energy for quite a while, and really that's all electric and gas, and this is sewer and garbage and water. So it's a different aspect of the utility world, and so I'm really enjoying it and get to meet some really great people.
Good to meet you.
Steve?
Yeah. So yeah, Steve Milton, been on the board for what, like 8 years?
Oh no, more than that, buddy.
Lived on the island for like 12 or so now. But work for a local internet and data center company. So I have been enjoying, again, learning more how the city works and how utilities function at the lower level there.
Great, thank you. And Vice Chair Thomas, Brian?
Hi, Will. I'm Brian Thomas. I've been on the board 6 years. I currently work for a company called Crown Castle in the wireless space. Before that, I worked for the Public Utilities Commission down in Olympia, and Really enjoy the board. It's a great group of people that are very dedicated to, providing input to the city's operation of the public utilities. They take their job seriously, but we also are very collegial and do a great job together. And it's rewarding work, volunteer work for the city. Welcome.
Thank you.
And last and probably least, I'm Tim O'Connell. I'm the chair. I've been on the board for the last, Steve and I started together. So I think actually, I think
because we went through our 2 terms, right? Is this
we went through our
9?
2 terms and we
Yeah.
got recruited back. So I think this is technically year 9 or 10. I forget, Frank. Where it all runs so quickly when you're having fun. My background, I'm an attorney, and back in the day, I did a great deal of work in the utility space. That's where I first met Brian, was proceedings down in front of the utilities. So, welcome. We look forward to having you as one of our members.
Thank you.
I can't see if there's anybody else who's on. Is there anyone desiring to make a public appearance?
Looks like no attendees, no public
There are,
attendees.
yeah, there are no public appearances this evening.
Thank you. I will note that are received and forwarded onto the board a letter of concern from one of the island citizens. She is not present this evening, but I hope her presence is known when we are doing our rate review, which will, just kind of for your reference, is the biggest part of what occupies us for 2 full meetings in the fall. Rate recommendations, make our own recommendations to the city council. If there's no public appearances, let's move on to regular minutes. First item is approval of the minutes from the February meeting. We had no March meeting. If anyone's had a chance to review those, I'll take a motion to approve the minutes.
I'll move that.
For a second.
Seconded.
Moved by Vice Chair Thomas, seconded by Member Milton. Any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for a motion to approve the minutes. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Votes aye as well. Thank you. That's approved. Next item is a report on the status of the meter replacement project. We're looking forward to this. As I say, Steve and I have been on the board for 9 years, and this project was at least in study mode when we started. So we're looking forward to who's going to present on that.
Good evening, utility board members. Jason Gittner, Chief of Operations. I'm going to hand the presentation over here in just a second to Alan Hunter, our Utility Operations Manager, and Jeff Hansen from HDR, who are leading up the AMI meter replacement project. And yes, it has been a long time coming, and we are getting very, very close to reality. So I understand the board talked about this in February, and so this is a continuation of that discussion with some additional information and context for the board's consideration this evening. So with that, Alan, it's over to you.
Great, thanks, Jason. Good evening, everybody. So let me go ahead and get my screen share here. Okay, so AMI. Just a brief background on the AMI replacement. It's pretty much AMI's advanced metering infrastructure. It involves radio transmitters connected to each meter in a fixed radio or fixed network. The information is sent to a data collection network, and the information can be sent multiple times a day. Some of the benefits are monitoring and managing water demands, support leak detection and other conservation goals, provide real-time information to support customer service, and customer portal to support customer water use tracking. Other benefits includes we'll be able to be seeing if the water is running backwards for backflow, as well as if the lines are cut for the radio, or even what's called dry pipe. If somebody decides to take a meter out and put a jumper in there, we can see that there's no water running in the system in the meter, and they'll send us an alert. Drivers for replacing the meters. Of course, we have a little over 7,800 meters, and 64% of those meters are 15 years old. In replacing these meters, we're going to improve accuracy. 82% of our meters are currently read manually. The others are read what's called with a drive-by or vehicle system that they go through and collect information. By replacing these meters to the AMI, more efficient use of staff time will happen, better manage water loss, reduce source of lead, and create a standard for replacing meters. So I'm going to turn this over to Jeff. Jeff is with HDR Engineering, and Jeff has kind of been with us through the start of the project, from the RFP process all the way to the vendor selection. And they will be working as the project and construction management for this project. Jeff?
All right. Thanks, Alan. And thanks for inviting me to be here this evening. Some of you on the board definitely look familiar. I was a part of previous board presentations. You go back many years, as has been said. This project has been some time in the works. So as Alan mentioned, HDR, we've been assisting the city throughout this process, making the decision to transition to AMI and then going through procurement. And what Alan is speaking to is that the city has elected to have us continue assisting you all with the deployment of this new system. So we'll be providing an extension of city staff over the next 2 years as this system and the new meters are rolled out. Just by way of kind of context, this is something that we at HDR do quite often, and I've got a lot of experience specifically in this space of water metering and AMI. For reference, just locally, this is a few years ago, but City of Renton, when Renton installed their system, I assisted them in that effort. Up north, Woodinville Water District, helped them through their deployment. Currently, City of Kennewick on the other side of the mountains is going through a very similar process as is Mercer Island, with the same technology, same vendor. And we do this work across the country. We're also currently helping other communities like Winston-Salem in the Carolinas install this type of system. Louisville, Kentucky, doing a lot of work there with customer coordination and outreach. So public outreach and public education, which is going to be a big piece of this. You see that mentioned there on the slide. A big part of this is going to be communicating with your customers early and often throughout the process, make sure everybody knows what is occurring. And we're going to get into more detail in that later in the presentation. So that's a little bit about us, but beyond me then and HDR, we wanted to note the selected vendors here. And Alan, did you want me to cover that, or did you want to take that piece?
You can go ahead and cover it, Jeff.
So this is just a note. I think this has been discussed with you before, but that through an extensive procurement process, reviewing proposals and pricing, the city has selected a system that's offered by Ferguson Waterworks. So Ferguson is the prime contractor here. And the technology that Ferguson reps is put forth by Census. So that's the brand of the new water meters and the AMI system that will be installed on the island. But overall, the contract is with Ferguson. So these are some of the key players that are going to be a part of this effort as we move forward. So Alan, that's what I had to say on that.
Great, thanks, Jeff. All right, so when we deploy these meters, when we install these meters, we'll have to put up what's called data collectors. And what these data collectors are is they collect and send data from individual meters to the data or meter data management system, which will in turn send it to our utility billing system. These collectors will have to be mounted on poles. The poles are going to be approximately 80 feet high and able to get the information. During the prop study, 7 locations were identified. And of the 7 locations, 3 of the sites are actually on city facilities or can be mounted in city facilities where their domain collectors will be able to capture 75% of the meters. Because of the terrain of our island, there's 4 other collectors that will capture the 25% remaining of the meters, and those will have to be put on PSE poles on those 4 sites. These are the areas that their PSE poles will be at. That will involve working with PSE as far as replacing their poles with 80-foot poles and then transferring their equipment onto those 80-foot poles, as well as installing our equipment.
How long do you think that process will take?
So the process for going through the, and I have that later in the slide here, but going through the permitting and reviewing process is 265 days according to PSC before we start construction. So the main, what we'll do is we'll get the meters deployed during that process, and so that we'll still be able to capture those readings via vehicle driving for about 25. And then as the collectors are brought online with PSE, we'll be able to capture those remaining meters. Implementation costs. So this is the most current implementation cost that we received from Ferguson Census. Have the cost of electronic meters, transmitter units, the data collection communication system. The meter data management or data analytics is Ferguson or Census refers to theirs as RNI or Regional Network Interface. The customer portal, installation of the water meters and registers and transmitters themselves, and then the project management training. Those are the implementation costs, and that totals a little over 4.5 million. And then we'll have our annual ongoing costs. These break it down to the meter data management system renewal annual costs, customer portal, and support annual support. These costs are broken down or stretched out over a 20-year period, which equals out to about 1.2 million, or about 63,000, a little over $63,000 a year for annual cost.
Is Ferguson Waterworks the long-term support vendor as well?
Yes. Yep. Other associated costs, like I mentioned there, PSE pole replacements. For those 4 particular poles that will have to be replaced, cost estimate from PSE is anywhere between $35,000 and $40,000 a pole. Of course, we have the project management and construction management from HDR. And then other city staff time will be our project management on our side, which will involve mostly processing invoices, crew time and meter box replacements and preparations, customer communication and notification, and of course, training.
So Alan, is PSC expecting the city to pay the full cost of the replacement poles?
Yes, that will be on us to pay those costs.
Okay, that's something that we should talk about at some point. Okay.
The contract. So the city has reached an agreement with the vendors on terms. There's actually 2 contracts. We have the Ferguson contract, which is our public works contract. And then we have a Census, which is a software service agreement contract. We're looking to go bid award scheduled for June 7th council meeting. Looking to deploy around Q3 of this year. It'll be a 2-year deployment. We are probably going to expect possible delays as far as due to supply issues. We've had these other problems with other projects that we have going on, and Census has reached out to us and is telling us that some of the smaller size meters could be some delays in supply issues. Deployment phasing. So the installation of the data collectors to 3 city-owned sites, of course, that covers 75% of the island. And then we'll cover the remaining 25% with the vehicle reading until we get those deployed, the collectors deployed on the PSE poles. The beginning process for coordinating with PSE owned poles, like I said, is minimum of 265 days to go through the permitting process. We're going to go ahead with deployment and prioritize the larger meters, which are the 3 and the 4-inch meters, which are more readily available through census, and they have produced their biggest revenue for us. And then we will go down to the 2.5-inch and smaller as they are available. Deployment schedule will be based on utility billing cycle. So as the utility billing will actually be setting the schedule for us as far as the cycle of their billing so that we don't interfere with the billing option, the billing there. And then of course, we'll have the maintenance and operations staff supporting this whole deployment. As Jeff spoke earlier, communications with customers. This is something that we're going to be really working with HDR as well as our communications manager on our side. This can be a island-wide impact, and it'll involve customer education, weekly updates, meter changeout and service disruptions. That's going to be really critical because we don't have what's called check valves on our meter setters, which prevents the customer's water from coming back into our system. So not only are we going to have to involve hanging tags, but also making physical contact with the customers before we turn off the water and change the meter out. It also involved, like I said, a communications manager. We can use the city's website, social media, and then as far as utility billing, using inserts into the billings to relay information as it occurs.
Alan, for a normal residential installation, how long is the customer going to be out of service and unable to access water?
I would say a normal installation wouldn't take more than 15 minutes. Now, it'll take more to coordinate. Honestly, it'll take more to coordinate with the customer to make sure that they don't have any water running, number one, and that we can turn the water off before we do that. But to actually change the meter out, once they get the meter in, they can turn the water back on and then start the process of actually connecting the radio system to the meter. So 15 minutes would probably be the most the customer would be out of water.
Thank you.
So that's about it. Any questions?
Any other questions?
You mentioned about the check valve. There not being check valves for the individual customer meters. Is this process, are you installing new check valves per, or do you have to cut it off upstream of like multiple meters in order to do individual changeouts?
So no, we are not installing the check valves. That'll be a bigger, more extensive project to install the check valves in there. So what we'll do is work with the customers to actually, number one, see if they have shutoff valve, interior shutoff valves on their side. So they can shut the water off on their side, or make sure that they don't have anything running that requires water, that we can pull that meter and change it out real quick.
Gotcha, but you don't have to actually shut it off, like to remove pressure from it upstream or anything like that. You can do it while the valve itself is still under pressure.
Yeah. So we'll shut off our side from the water main, as far as the water being fed on our side, we can do that. But on the downstream or the customer side, they can do it under pressure. They just get a little wet.
Got it.
Alan, can you stop sharing your screen for a minute just so we can see the whole board and take questions that way? Thank you.
Go ahead, Brian.
Yeah, this is probably a difficult question, Jason, but what are we going to do about consumers who, for whatever reason, contest changing out their meter? Kind of like the kind of PSC when they were deploying new meters now that are RF based and that sort of thing, encountered some resistance. And there were some folks that just refused to bite the bullet and make the change to new technology. Are we going to be prepared to deal with those folks in some fashion?
Good question, Vice Chair Thomas. It's something we're talking about internally. We
I
are aware.
always ask good questions.
we are aware that we are aware and looking at a possibility of an opt-out possibility for customers. I will tell you, There's some mixed feelings about that, and some further discussions internally need to take place first and foremost before we're ready to make a recommendation, but that will likely come back to the board with a recommendation and looking for board support on whether or not we offer an opt-out scenario for customers or not. I can tell you that Bellevue just recently announced that they are not allowing an opt-out clause for their customers, and other jurisdictions have done the similar, but I also recognize that some jurisdictions have provided that. So it's something we're aware of. We'll be talking about it internally, and we'll likely be back to the board to talk about it further with you.
Yeah, so my 2 cents worth at this point in time, we went through this at the commission years ago with PSC and some of the other electrics when they were doing swapping out for smart meters. And there was the back and forth about whether to allow opt-out or not. We accommodated opt-out, but I think the key is I think a gentle touch with lots of education and outreach will overcome most of the resistance, and we may just have pockets or a handful here and there, hopefully. I think, you have a well-educated island, and I think most folks understand the need for a change in the efficiency and the cost savings that this will engender for the utility. So most folks will embrace it and accept it. But I mean, just a gentle but firm approach would probably be best, I guess.
Yeah, I'm up on Brian's question / comment. The meter is on our side of DMARC, right? I mean, that is city-owned property. It is not on the side, it is not part of the water delivery system that is owned by the customer.
That's right.
That's correct.
I share the concern with having opt-outs.
Yeah.
Just those reasons. It's our property. What's the plan for meter locations that might be, are there meter locations that would be problematic? I'll be very candid. I'm aware of at least one meter that's like in the middle of somebody's driveway. How is the radio going to communicate if it's got to be protected by a structure that's capable of being driven over?
Yeah, so those actually, we did a test on the meters when we had 2 vendors, their top 2 vendors. We did a test on them as part of our selection, and those radios actually are pretty durable as far as communications through cars, metal plates. They do need some kind of access as far as I wouldn't say line of sight, but they're pretty good as far as getting communications. Now, we will have some problematic where some meters may be in buildings, some of our buildings there, where we'll have to somehow be able to put the radio receptor on the outside of the building and connect it to the meter. I think that's probably our most problematic, if you think about it.
Right. Thank you. George, I saw you raise your hand. I didn't mean to cut you off.
Yeah, I just wanted to, maybe this is a question for Jeff. How is the outreach going to be conducted? Is it going to be mailers, or how do you intend to communicate this to the island residents?
So we have not developed that plan yet. I mean, we know that's our first activity before Q3 hits and deployment starts. So our team hasn't coordinated with city communications team yet. So it's a little premature for me to say, but
okay.
Certainly mailers, obviously. Point is, there's outreach prior to a door hanger being placed on somebody's door saying that we're coming by in a week to do this. So,
okay.
Yeah.
Schedule when to do your wash.
It will likely be a number of different avenues. We have a group on the island that still prefers the mailbox delivery, the individual delivery that way, and we have some folks that are more inclined for social media and postings online. So it'll be a combination of both. And as Jeff mentioned, we'll be working closely with our communications team here on the city to make sure that we hit all sides of the communication platform for the community.
Sounds good.
Question for Chief Keener, I suppose. 5.8 million, another, by my count, 100 plus for PSC polls. So call that 5.9, call it $6 million bucks, just for the sake of discussion. when do we begin incurring those costs, and are those costs included in some of the things that we've discussed in the budget process about bonding?
Great question. So we've currently budgeted 4.1 million in this budget biennium currently. The board will recall that we've talked about looking at debt issuance for some of these projects. This is a prime project that we have discussed. We have been in conversation with our finance team regarding the costs. And right now, at this point in time, we have available fund balance to keep this project churning along and getting us to the construction phase. And then we will circle back and have a conversation about when the right time to issue debt for projects will be and whether or not this project fits in line with that. Currently, it's funded at 4.1, so we're not, I don't want to say the increase isn't substantial, but we're not within striking distance, I would say, in terms of getting this project accomplished from a financial perspective. The time frame, I will tell you from a debt issuance conversation, you may recall that we have to complete the project within 3 years once issuing that debt. And given the COVID delays that we're experiencing, and that this is already a 2-year project, we want to make sure that we hit that sweet spot. So this project might be one that starts off first and then gets underway, and then we go and issue that debt, and we can certainly recoup those costs that have been expensed to date on that project. But it's something that we'll be working with the finance team to sort out specifically in terms of the finances. But we're on the right track. It has gone up in terms of the cost, but we've been talking about this for quite a while, for a number of years. So it's a little bit to be expected, just given the market as well.
So that'll be some of the discussion that we have September, October.
Absolutely.
Very good. Are there any other questions relating to the meter replacement project? Seeing and hearing none, I express my appreciation. Alan, Jeff, thank you very much for your time this afternoon. We very much appreciate the update. We look forward to hearing from you as the project moves along. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The next item of regular business is an update on the SCADA project. So again, Chief Kittner, I'll turn it over to you.
So good evening. I'll ask Maya Giddings, our CIP project manager, to turn her screen on. Maya is our CIP project manager who's been with us and working feverishly in the background on a number of projects, including the SCADA project. And I'm excited for her to provide an update on the sewer side of the SCADA project. So Maya, I'll turn it over to you.
Elaine's going to be helping me and sharing her screen for the presentation. So yeah, I'll just provide you with an update of the SCADA project as a whole, and then dive into the sewer update. Next slide, please. So the sewer collection system consists of 18 pump stations located around the island, and most are located on private property in easements, and all of the pump stations are located close to the shoreline, and the stations are organized in a way that they pump wastewater to either the North or South King County pump stations. The city relies on the Supervisory Control and Data Acquisition, which stands for SCADA system, to maintain reliable wastewater collection and water distribution services to the residents and customers on Mercer Island. The SCADA system is a computer-based remote operating system that provides real-time data for both the city's water and sewer site. It also alerts operators to any critical alarms and provides local control and monitoring of the process. Slide, please. So actually this picture on the right shows the SCADA room in our Public Works Maintenance Building. And as you know, this project began a few years ago, back in 2017, after the city learned that some critical components of the SCADA system were obsolete and no longer available by manufacturers. So this prompted an internal assessment by the city where we found that the SCADA system had frequent false alarms as well as reliability and usability issues. As a result, the city embarked on the SCADA master plan to thoroughly evaluate the system and establish a framework for replacement. And the plan recommended that the city upgrade the sewer and water SCADA systems. And some of the benefits to upgrading both systems are that it allows the city to standardize on one technology platform. So both water and sewer could use the same hardware and software. It reduces the risk that an aging component could fail. And it provides an opportunity for operators to better understand the system. And throughout the entire project, the operators have been actively engaged, making sure that the end product really meets their needs. Slide, please. So now for an update on the sewer portion of this project. We're currently in design for 17 pump stations. Although there's 18 in our system, we've omitted pump station 11 for now because it is currently being updated by King County as part of their North Mercer Etnite project. So it will be upgraded to SCADA afterwards. Just last month, we reviewed the 90% plans and specifications, and the scope of work primarily will consist of replacing the programmable logic control panel, which is kind of like the brains for each site. And the picture on the top of this slide shows the inside of the cabinet that will be replaced. There will also be, we will also be making sure that there's proper ventilation at each pump station and that it complies with the fire code. And there'll be some generator monitoring upgrades, such as installing a low fuel level sensor, which will be beneficial, especially during the storm season. So operators can just look on the SCADA system and see what stations are low and then go to those stations specifically. And the picture on the, the picture on the bottom shows one of our above ground emergency generator pumps. Yeah, emergency generators. But most of our generators are located below ground in a vault. Yeah, thanks, Elaine. So this project does require some city permits. We need to obtain 4 permits for each of the 17 sites. The shoreline exemption permit needs to be approved first before the other 3 permits can even be reviewed. And the SCADA project also involves switching from a phone-based communication system to a cellular-based system. And since pump station 4 is located in the right-of-way, in the WashDOT right-of-way on the west side of the island, underneath the I-90 lanes, we've obtained a WashDOT permit for this installation. So the next steps will be to submit the permit applications and finalize the bid documents. The engineer's construction estimate for this project is between 2.2 and 3.1 million. And this does not include the cost for programming, since programming will be handled by our current design contractor, Brown and Caldwell. We anticipate going to bid for this project later in the fall. However, due to the supply or the long lead times that we're seeing in the industry, construction for this project likely won't finish or won't start until the middle of next year. And just to provide you with some context and an update for the SCADA water construction project. So bid award was February 2021. Parts were ordered at the end of June, early July. There've been a couple of lead time delays. And right now we're waiting on one last component of the PLC panel to ship before we can, or before the contractor can finish building out the panel, and then we need to test and install those panels. And currently that last part is estimated to ship later this spring, early summer. slide. So that concludes the SCADA update. Thank you for your time. Are there any questions?
Not for me. That was very, very, very thorough presentation.
Yeah, thank you.
Tim, you're muted.
I confess I lost about the last 2 minutes of your presentation. My screen froze. I apologize. But no reason to delay. Any questions, Ms. Giddings?
Nope. Well done.
Kinder, I'll ask you the same question we talked about just a moment ago. Where does this sit financially, bonding, those kinds of issues?
A good question. It is in the exact same place that the meter replacement project is. Again, we have available fund balance to get this project off and running. It'll be a conversation that it's one of the projects that we've identified, as well as the meter replacement project, as possible bonding or debt issuance. So to be determined. It's important. This project's been talked about for many years as well, and it's coming into construction phase, which is great to see. So that'll be a conversation that again we'll have back with the board regarding the finances, as specifically as we get into the fall and into the CIP discussions.
Thank you. Any other questions? Ms. Giddings or the chief? I have an issue I'd like to raise with our new board member. Well, I mean, do I understand you work with a contractor that is overseeing this project?
I work, excuse me, I work for Brown and Caldwell, yes, and Brown and Caldwell is the engineer on this project. And that's where I, from an ethics standpoint, I don't know how much I could participate in terms of Q&A for this specific project. I will say, as I said at the beginning, I actually have zero involvement and know very little. I learned more about this project tonight than I knew before this meeting, so.
Just wanted, I know that the appropriate treatment of conflicts of interest is an issue of very high priority to the city. We go through an annual refresher on that. I think you just did by virtue when you started with us. So I just wanted to raise the issue. I think, as far as I'm concerned, your comment about refraining from participating in these discussions.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Hearing none, seeing none. Ms. Giddings, thank you very much for your presentation. Very helpful. And this is a project we're working on the city and the board advisory capacity. We're working on for many years, so it's very encouraging to see. Thank you for your time.
Thanks.
Well, very good. Moving on to the agenda. Next item of business is the work plan. We are contemplating not having a meeting in May. June is board elections and sustainability update. Anything else that any other member of the board thinks needs to do that's mentioned in our work plan?
I'll just add that at the next meeting with the sustainability update, the climate action plan is underway for the city, and Ross Freeman, our sustainability coordinator, will be here. We will likely have our consulting group that is going to start reaching out to the different boards and commissions to talk about the climate action plan and how you play a role in the development of that plan. So that'll be part of the next utility board conversation at the next meeting. So that's the cap is identified in the work plan as to be scheduled. We're gonna partner with sustainability updates to the next board meeting.
Thank you, Jason.
There was one thing mentioned on the work plan at the bottom there in the kind of to be scheduled. The draft utility CIP was set for April, May meeting. Is that getting pushed or?
it is getting pushed. So from a city perspective, we are thick into the budget development, drafting of the budget now. And so we have not even done we've done one internal review from a CIP perspective, a draft CIP perspective. Once it gets a little bit further baked, we'll likely bring that back. My guess is probably the July timeframe. It's a good time. Ideally, what we would do is we get out there and do our site tour for some of these utility sites that are going to be in the draft CIP, just so you can see them with your own eyes. So we'll likely tie it to the July meeting at this point in time.
Yeah, I see that it's there in the current work plan. It's in the July meeting, July 12, and I think that's great. I think it is very important that we try to pay some attention to that before we get into the budget discussions in the following months.
Great, thank you.
Great points. Thank you. Anybody else?
I have
think-
one other quick
Please.
update for the board, if I can.
Please.
The utility board, I'd like you to recognize the council packet goes out this week. The next April 19th council meeting, there will be a budget request or a staffing request for Public Works. We have 2 staffing positions that we are going to the council with a request that are both utility impact. Our long tenured utility engineer is less than 12 months away from retirement. And so in this market, it has been incredibly challenging to hire staff. And so we are going to be seeking council authorization to do a hire ahead for a utility engineer. Ideally, we get someone new on board while our existing utility engineer is still here, so that she can pass on the years of institutional knowledge about our system to the next utility engineer. And that also provides us a little flexibility so that we don't have this large gap in time from when she departs and the next person starts. So that's one request. And then the other request that we have is a 0.5 FTE position on the stormwater side that we're requesting. There's no budgetary impact or financial impact as we're offsetting it through some contracted services, bring this work in-house. Our stormwater quality tech was previously a half-time position split between stormwater quality and our arborist position. That individual has since left the organization. And given the changes that have taken place on Public Works, we're trying to right size functions. And so one of those pieces is the stormwater function. And we are currently under a new 2022 to 2028, I believe, NPDES permit. It has additional requirements that are being brought with it. And so we are asking the council to move that 0.5 FTE position to a 1.0 FTE position. Again, it's offset through some more repair and maintenance services lines that we contract out, but that will likely tie into the stormwater rate discussion as we get into the fall, because that will be an ongoing FTE position. So that's going to the council on the 19th. I just wanted the utility board to be aware of it, and you will hear much more about this as we get into the rate discussion later this fall.
Thank you. Any other business or reports that should come before the board? Hearing none, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Mr. Thomas, so moved. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
That was George. Thank you, Member Marshall. Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Very good. Thank you, everybody, for your participation this evening. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.
Good night.
Bye-bye.